And there we go. We're live. Welcome everyone. Tuesday
We're
night
here.
Q&A. I'm Clay, joined by the lovely, gracious, sweet, kind, warm, generous E-Train. Good to see y'all.
That would be me.
Good to be with y'all. Hope y'all have had a good start to the week. A lot going on. So we'll talk about some of the things of interest, some of the known, some of the unknown. But this is really kind of your night. So if you've got some questions, comments, something you want to talk about, then just let us know. We've received a couple questions from people, so we'll cover some of those.
And FYI, I have realized, excuse me, that the apparently StreamYard doesn't like X anymore. So I have got X, Rumble, YouTube. I think we're good. So if you guys have any questions, comments, whatever, please let us know. And I got it ASAP.
Yeah, go ahead and ask them, and Ellen will relay them. So
if I seem like I'm not paying attention, I'm just looking at all the screens. Trying to make a little more room up here. Hey. I'm sliding.
Just banging things around.
I'm sorry.
Ellen's still broadcasting from one of our remote locations around the globe. She also has Chunk and Toulouse being occupied by another babysitter. What's her name?
Aspen.
Aspen. Yeah.
Or Spasm, depending upon how she's acting at the time.
So they've got a new bud. They're all excited and playing with Aspen. So they may not make an appearance tonight.
Probably not. You'll have to see a whole parade of everyone.
Sitting here thinking, guys, go ahead.
Please, whether you are on Rumble, X, YouTube, hit that like and subscribe. Just so you don't miss anything. And yeah. So we can keep doing what we're doing.
Yeah, this is kind of a laid back night. We don't have, a whole lot of topics necessarily prepared. We've had, some questions or comments mailed or texted in. Ellen is obviously in close touch with some of y'all, some members of the family. So one of the questions or comments we got was on the appointment of Matt Gaetz as Attorney General. Now we have
talked, stirring up a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have that video?
I thought I sent it to you. I can't switch off screens right now.
Okay, you texted it to me, but let me see if I can find it.
Yeah, Matt Gaetz has been exposing some truths that people aren't, or the government isn't taking very well. Let's put it that way.
Let me see if I can find it.
I'll try to tag him in.
Yeah, this was a late submission, so I was thinking Ellen texted it to me a little bit before the show. Okay, it's not coming up.
Let me see if I can get it on my phone real quick.
Okay.
So we can. Sorry, guys. Just give us a sec. Hi, everyone.
While she is hunting that down for us, couple of other things. Go ahead and start off with a couple other questions that I wanted to answer. One individual was kind of looking for suggestions for Christmas. They had seen the the stat that 38% of Americans last Christmas went into debt to pay for Christmas. Some are still paying off last year's Christmas. Charging it, on their credit card at 25% interest makes it relatively expensive. Hey, Sky, how are you doing? Good to see you.
I
Appreciate
direct
you being with us.
messaged. Yes. Hi, Sky. I direct messaged it to you on X.
Okay.
That'd be quicker, I thought.
Yeah. So some are still paying off last year's Christmas. While it's, late in the year, I thought it was a fair question, and I'll go ahead and try to list some ideas or suggestions for Christmas. First one, most important, is do not go into debt to pay for Christmas. You have got to build a budget. You have a budget that you can afford, and you've got to commit to sticking to that. That's just rule number one. Number two, I would suggest, if at all possible, particularly going forward, that you try to prepare in advance, save some money each month for Christmas, even if it's only $25 or $50, whatever you can do. Go ahead and get something started and be saving something up for Christmas. Next thing you should do is make a list. And this may be in some ways the most difficult because you need to prioritize. Hey, Melissa, how you doing? Good to see you. You need to prioritize who you want to buy for. And, that may sound or feel kind of tacky or ugly, but it's just a practical reality. You use the list to determine your budget and determine how much you spend on each individual. So make a list of the people you want to buy gifts for. Next thing you would do is allocate amounts to each person. Prioritize your spending. And there are ways to kind of ease this. I have a modestly large family, and the adults have pretty much agreed not to buy gifts for each other. So just buy for the kids. That can help a lot. And it greatly simplifies my life, which I greatly appreciate as well. But the key is you've got to stick to your budget. No exceptions. No exceptions. If you can save money on one person's gift, great. You just save money. It doesn't mean you need to spend it on somebody else. And
no, and I don't know. I know my friends and family, like, especially when I was younger and even now, they're like, I don't want you to go into debt to buy me something for Christmas. Like, that's not most practical people, even though you feel like you need to do something, don't want that. They don't want you to have to do sorry, to hurt yourself to do something for someone else. They would rather just write a letter or just something kind, something that may mean something, a picture or a collage, whatever. You can do a lot of things just that are very cheap.
Yes. If somebody gets bothered by your gift, great. That shortens your list for next year. Consider that saved money. Something else is, and this is not really my strength or my gift, but look for deals. Shop around. I've gotten, and like Ellen said, you can make things relatively simple. I remember, one Christmas I got cookies from a friend. Absolutely loved it. The person, went to a little trouble, tried to find out what was my favorite cookie, which is a white chocolate macadamia nut. And they went to the trouble and made a batch. It took time, it took thought, and it really was kind of humbling. Humbling. So I appreciated the hell out of it. I appreciated somebody taking that much time and thought and putting that much energy into it. In terms of, deals, I hate shopping. Absolutely hate shopping. So I would go buy Christmas the day before Christmas. It
And
offered
the
a
best
couple
deals.
advantages. Yeah, it offered a couple advantages. One, inventory was a little low, so I didn't have to worry about being picky. If I found something I thought would work, I was happy. Two, the deals, the prices were better. But in terms of finding an item and shopping it around, didn't really do that. Nowadays, with the internet and so much, today it would
She
cost
has a point.
$50 to bake those cookies.
She has a point.
Yes.
And hey, Jane.
Hey, Jane, how you doing? Good to see you too. But for such a wondrous gift, $50 is a deal, absolute steal. But shopping around, it's not my gift. But nowadays, with so many goods and items, available on the net, all the online retailers, it's a whole lot easier. So keep plugging away, looking for ideas, looking for, sales or something. And particularly as Christmas gets closer and, you know, retail sales aren't what they expected, you'll see more and more price cuts as they're trying to, clear out some of the excess inventory. Find the best deals. And finally, most importantly, don't go into debt. Don't know if I mentioned that before, but don't go into debt.
That was number one and the last one.
It is the first and the last. It is absolutely you going into debt. Think about it. It's really not in keeping with the spirit of Christmas, if I can use that phrase.
Mm-hmm.
This should be a time of joy and gratitude for the graces given us, the gifts given us. So show others how it's done and do it right. And don't do something that will make you miserable for an extended period of time, worrying about how to pay off that credit card.
Or how
I
to
mean, it
feed
just,
yourself. I mean,
yeah.
that's crazy.
I know some people have some big hearts and, they love giving gifts. But I don't know anybody worth their salt that wants you to hurt yourself in order to get them a gift. Erwin, the only person we should give Christmas gifts to should be poor and handicapped people and orphans. Yes, I'll vote for that. And, I'm kind of proud of my baby because, for Christmas, they take the kids and go work at a homeless shelter. That's their Christmas. They really don't do a lot of gift giving. And I think for the kids, that teaches a relatively valuable perspective. And so, don't go into debt. Enjoy your Christmas.
Be with the people that you love, and that's the best gift you can give.
Absolutely. Second question. Well,
We're doing the gates.
Yeah, I just remember that.
Why, thank you.
And
Direct
let's
message
see.
on X.
Yep. I'm trying to get there.
Bless his heart.
All right. Let me see. Let me put this over here.
Make sure your soundy sound is on.
Yep. Let me share this, click this, click this, click this, click this, click this.
When I saw this, I said, that's why they're going after Gates now.
And this video is, I'm not sure how old, but the dude is just built a little different. You know, when you think of politicians, just keep in your mind how many politicians would give this kind of tour about their peers and associates. All right, here we go.
Congressman Gates offered to take us on a tour.
So one of the committees where people have a lot of information is the Appropriations Committee, because they can view almost any vector of government funding. And so, you know, this is Mr. Rutherford's office. He's on the Ethics Committee and the Appropriations Committee. 152 stock trades. Stocks go through the roof. And, actually bought Raytheon stock the day that Russia invaded Ukraine.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah, I mean, imagine if every American could make money off of war.
Yeah, setting aside the whole shame and ethics questions. How many more on our hit list here?
There are a few more. I wish there were fewer on the hit list. I wish we could only stop at one or two offices, but as it turns out, energy is a sector that sees a lot of congressional stock trading.
Sure.
And we have members who are on the Energy Subcommittee of Appropriations, like Michael Guest, chairman of the Ethics Committee, and he's traded somewhere between tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars in energy stocks. He's been buying online gaming stocks and just making a killing on them. So you would think that the people that were on the ethics committee would be your best allies in this fight, but indeed they're some of the most prolific traders. And not only trading, but in the case of Mr. Guest, trading in an area where he has access to energy information more so than almost any other American.
And no indication that he wants to maybe slow down, pump the brakes, recognize that there might be some appearance of impropriety here.
It seems as though the pace is only accelerating.
All right.
Now, I think like one of the main issues here is he's pointing out Republicans, not Democrats.
Yes. Yeah, he doesn't even mention Democrats. You know, a lot of people will fuss about Pelosi being such an outstanding stock picker and making extremely timely trades, but it goes both ways. And, you know, Gates is a guy that has freely, without inhibition, pointed that out. Now, there have been some, and, you know, had some people ask me about the allegations concerning Gates, and the allegation is that he had sex with a minor.
Hang
The
on.
report.
Let me preface
Yeah,
this real
go ahead.
quick. They are now bringing all this up and going to release congressional documents or the House documents from depositions or the DOJ, something like that, to not allow him to become Attorney General.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to release it since he's resigned from the House. I don't think they can, but it'll probably, quote unquote, be leaked.
Well, whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah, somebody will get a copy and release it, because there are many people who are dead set against him assuming the head of the Justice Department. But these allegations were actually investigated by the Department of Justice 2 years ago. And the DOJ, after investigating, is when they dropped it. I don't know when they initiated it.
They dropped it in 2022. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know exactly when they began it. But why did they drop the investigation?
Especially
it's really not
under
complicated.
Under a Biden administration, they would have nailed Gates to the wall and had him out of there so fast if they could. Am I wrong?
I find no fault with that. You know, Gates is not a politically popular guy on either side of the aisle. That ought to tell you something. But the DOJ investigation, the allegations hinge on the testimony of 2 witnesses, both of which have, let me say, modestly gaping credibility issues that were significant enough to get the DOJ, which I think we can all agree, hates Gates. Most people in DC do, or a lot of people in DC do. But the credibility issues were so great that the DOJ knew that no jury would ever convict him. Now, who are these witnesses? First one is a dude by the name of Joel Greenberg, who has been described by many as one of the most corrupt Florida politicians of all time, which that's quite a claim. That's probably saying something.
Do we have some
Well,
visuals here or no?
No.
Okay.
I really didn't have time to put a whole lot together. Sandy!
Hi! How are you, honey? Missed you.
Good to see you.
Absolutely.
Sandy is an can't say an old member of the family, but we've been around 2 years, and she was
a member of the family before there was a family.
Yeah. So we love us some Sandy.
Yes, we do.
I also noticed Jane made a comment. Let me go ahead, while we're on comments, let me get to that as well. On Christmas morning, my parents used to make us pick one unopened gift and take it to the local orphanage. It was horrible, but we used to pray it wasn't the gift we really wanted.
That's kind of like gift roulette, is it not?
It is. That's a good way to put it. Sandy, hanging in there. Missed y'all so much. We missed you too.
We missed you.
Good to quote unquote see you again, and hope you're doing well. Hope things are getting better. Mm-hmm. All right, the witnesses. Joel Greenberg. Joel Greenberg has a history. One of the reasons people call him the most corrupt politician in Florida's history is he has a very well-known history. For example, he has repeatedly made false sex allegations against politicians before. He even accused a school teacher who was running against him for tax collector. He accused the teacher.
Who wants to be a tax collector? That sounds like the worst job ever.
But he accused her of having sex with a student, an underage student. He is also of some renown for attempting to frame his own attorney with child porn pictures. Mm-hmm. Sound familiar? Even in the trial, as more and more of this kind of stuff came out, the judge, who was a Clinton appointee, called the lies that Greenberg perpetuated downright evil, quote unquote. Yep. Greenberg also became embroiled in a series of other crimes, faced a possible 27 years in federal prison upon conviction. One of these crimes...
Sandy, thank you.
That's very sweet, Sandy. We appreciate it very much. Thank you.
You're the best.
27 years. One of these crimes that he was found guilty of, was himself having sex with a minor. In fact, it is the same quote unquote 17-year-old who is the central character in the claims against Gates. Nice little coincidence there. The funny thing is, even Greenberg claims that he did not know she was a minor. He met her and had sex with her after identifying her on a sugar daddy site. Sugar daddy, sugar baby. She was wanting to be somebody's sugar baby.
Allegedly.
Now this was
That's never been proven.
I thought that was presented in trial. We'll go ahead and say allegedly, because like I say, I had to do some quick work on this. So Greenberg stated he didn't know she was a minor when he was having sex with her. She lied about her age. She is now active on OnlyFans, so selling access for money, and has appeared in various porn videos. Go figure.
Now
Greenberg,
we're talking about Gates, right? Or Greenberg.
yes, this is the individual who alleged that Gates had sex with her.
Okay, well, she was 17, but they alleged that it was taking place in New York, and in New York, 17 is the age of consent.
And Greenberg is also now serving an 11-year sentence. Now, according to a 2023 lawsuit, Greenberg repeatedly begged Gates to secure a pardon for him. And when Gates refused, that's when Greenberg vowed vengeance. Now, the lawsuit was in 2023. This was actually several years earlier. An inmate who shared a cell with Greenberg and who was a federal informant told federal agents that Greenberg told him, quote, the woman, the minor in this case, would be willing to adopt Greenberg's lie in hopes of future financial benefit. Greenberg admitted to the informant that he was making stuff up about Gates as part of a plan to lighten what could have been as much as a 27-year sentence.
Yep.
So he was eventually sentenced to 11 years for his role in sex trafficking, identity theft, public corruption involving both taxpayer money. That's why he wanted to be a tax collector, taxpayer money and contracts, stalking, securing fraudulent business loans. I mean, he just pretty much ran the gamut of most every section in the Florida Code. Greenberg also admitted to paying the woman's legal bills because at the time she didn't have money. So those are the two accusers of Gates' impropriety. The DOJ investigated for a little over a year and announced the closure of the investigation in 2022.
Whoa, I know, right?
So, yeah, when you hear some of the allegations, you kind of got to take things with a grain of salt. Be in Missouri.
A Boulder assault.
Be in Missouri. Do the show me thing. Now Gates, before he got married, he was
he's a playboy.
I was trying to think of a nice way to put it, but he was known as a partier and dated a number of women. So, but since he has been married, he apparently has been a very different individual in terms of his social persona. So,
Jane,
if the Biden DOJ could have gotten him, they would have.
Mm-hmm.
I think so. I think I think a lot of the Republicans, if they could have gotten him, they would have. So,
I think the WLD. I don't know what that.
I think the Wild World. Don't know if that got cut off or not.
You gotta explain, Sandy. We don't know all of the YouTube things, all the little acronyms.
Yeah, especially me. E-Train is better at them than I am, but
I think she was saying I think they would.
Yes,
absolutely, they would have. Yeah, they want him out. They don't like anything that he stands for, because he calls out his own party. He's just like, look, this is what's going on, and I think that's why they started going after him again.
Well, that and one thing I like about him is that he has said one of the first things he will do is release the Epstein list as well as the Diddy list, which, I have wondered for 4 years why nobody else has been charged. Epstein was charged. Ghislaine was charged, convicted of peddling children for sex. But nobody else was investigated. Nobody else was charged. Nobody else was arrested. Somebody was having sex with the minors. Who? That ought to be investigated. It ought to be investigated intensely. The child sex trafficking, the DOJ's lost track of over 300,000 minors, and they admit that many of them, if not most, have ended up being trafficked. That's just abhorrent. So I
Did you-
think, interestingly, one reason these allegations are coming out about him is because I think there's some clear indications that he would pursue this kind of stuff heavily, intensely.
If you've
So-
been accused of this kind of thing and there are actually people doing it, yeah, that's some clear motivation. I mean, 550,000 kids are missing.
And that's inexcusable.
It
They've just
is.
been released into the wild to somebody that claims to be their guardian.
That is not.
And, people complain about separating kids and parents at the border. But when you know that hundreds of thousands of kids are being smuggled across the border for trafficking purposes, you need to have the kid isolated and fed and feeling, modestly safe so that they can be honest as to whether or not this individual is a family member or not a family member.
But that's not. You probably didn't watch the congressional hearing today.
No.
I was watching part of it, and they were saying that no, a lot of these kids, when they came into the custody of ORR, they were bruised. They had obvious signs of sexual abuse. They were terrified. I mean, there's two ways to do this. You either treat them great so that they want to be with you, or you abuse them so badly that they're terrified to say anything different.
Well, many of them, particularly the young girls, are apparently, according to Border Patrol officers, are raped repeatedly on the journey up through Mexico.
Yeah. There's a 12-year-old that was 9 months pregnant.
Yeah, it's just wrong.
Oh, you got a gifted membership.
How do you pronounce that? Mudamir?
Have you already forgotten?
Yes.
Muddy
Spill the
Mare.
beans. Muddy Mare. Okay.
I think I may have messed that up again.
And she's getting on me for not remembering the pain I have to endure.
Muti. That's right.
Muti. That's
Mare.
it.
I'm gonna
have to
it's
write
gonna
that
take a minute.
down.
I think I actually wrote it down. My iPad's on top of it right now, so I'm sorry.
I do remember, the French part of it. So those were a couple of the questions or whatever that were directed.
Sorry.
And I think it's just all kind of a fascinating process.
Mm-hmm.
Watching the what I would describe as the fear, the panic, the anger, the upset, the disgust, whatever, of some of the entrenched Washington people who've been up there for decades. Now, I freely admit, not a big government fan. So when I see people up there that I think have long overstayed their welcome and they're bothered, I'm like, maybe that's not such a bad thing. Thank you, Muti.
Yeah. I think that I think a lot of those guys, I mean, did you see oh God, what's his name? Has escaped me. He keeps freezing on camera.
McConnell.
McConnell, yeah. There's something seriously going on there.
Yeah, I think both he and Biden are, suffering from dementia or
Something.
yeah, they have diminished mental capacity. Their
Yeah.
time to serve in public office ended long ago.
Yes.
And that we have such a system entrenched that protects and insulates those people. I mean, for years, we were told that Biden is A-OK, he's in control, he's healthy, he's making all the decisions, and we now know that's not true. Probably could say the same
Yeah.
thing for McConnell, which the responsibility they have is just too great, but the power is addictive. The attention, the laurels, the money, the adulation that they receive is just addictive.
Do you think it's that, or is it just the fact that they're the proper puppets to put in place?
Well, in some ways, most every senior politician is a puppet because the bureaucracy has grown so big, so large. I was reading the other day, the Justice Department had 70,000 attorneys working for it, people working for it. That's massive. Do we
Yeah.
really need that many people working in the federal judiciary? But once it
I-
gets that big, one person really can't control it or manage. It ends up having a life of its own. And even if you try to push down some ideas, it's not going to be adopted by people, lower down the food chain. They're going to do pretty much what they want to do. There's not accountability. And I think that's a big problem. Muti, several have age-related issues. Pelosi, McConnell, Schumer. Yes, yes, yes. I'm a big believer in term limits. I don't think people ought to be elected to office and be able to get rich off of being a politician.
No.
And you've got numerous examples on both sides of the aisle. I point to AOC because she is just one of the most recent and quote unquote most successful. But it's on both sides of the aisle. She was elected, was it 4 years ago? Couldn't even afford an apartment, had to
Yeah.
sleep in her office when she first got there. She'd been a bartender, no money. Now she's worth $29 million.
How does that happen?
Seriously? How does that happen? How does that happen? Somebody that has been, poor for a decade, within a few years of within a year of being in Washington, became a millionaire. And within 4 years, 29, $30 million. There's some issues there.
Mhm.
So, big fan of term limits. I don't think people who, go to office ought to become millionaires while they are in
I
politics.
I think it's also, accountability. It's like, if you say you're going to do something and you're in office, you better do it or you're going to get voted out. And that doesn't seem to happen. And I don't really understand why.
Well, being an incumbent has a lot of privileges. You get your name in the paper all the time. You get free mailing. You get free publicity. You get free trips back to the area you were representing. You have, meetings, and you're present at rallies and, sponsored events. You're asked to speak, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you get constant attention. And you have a far better opportunity to just keep broadcasting your message, which ends up being a bunch of sound bites.
Yeah.
But with those kind of built-in advantages, it's far more difficult for an unknown without big money to run an effective campaign and to counter that kind of free publicity, attention, press, PR, et cetera, et cetera. So incumbents win 95% of the time. It's really stupid.
It is stupid.
And once somebody, gets in office, once they've been reelected once, the chances of defeating them until they resign are extremely small. Yeah, where does all that money come from if your base pays $174K a year? And remember, DC is not a cheap town to live in. So $174K in DC, is probably equivalent to, I don't know, 120, 130K in mid America. That's still not bad money. But how, and 20% of that, 25% of that goes in taxes, which cuts it down even further. So you've got your expenses. How do you become a millionaire off that kind of money in a few short years?
Insider trading.
Yeah.
They have all the information before anybody else does. They know it's going down. They know who's going to get sanctioned, whatever. And they make moves based on that.
Well, there's that, and there's also quote unquote book deals. You can have a publishing company with a sponsor who, decides that we'll pay you $9 million for a book that hadn't been written. They'll send a ghost writer to write it for you. Or, I remember one time Hillary made a trade in cattle futures. One trade, one day, made $100,000. Now, the beauty of futures trading is that, one, you don't need any upfront money. So there's no risk. Just had a trade entered in for. Two, those trades, you've got one winner, one loser.
I'll be right back.
Okay. So somebody loses 100,000, somebody makes 100,000. Well, that outcome is not entered in the books until the close of the day when it settles. And it would not be difficult to imagine a scenario where a trade was entered in maybe right before the close, right before the settle price was established, and the winner picked. I just have a hard time believing Hillary had much experience, background, or knowledge about cattle futures, and making $100,000 on a futures trade in one day is just a quaint little number. So there are all sorts of ways that politicians can, make money. Large money quickly. And it is quote unquote not illegal. Then there's always the insider trading. That never hurts. Maybe Doge will cut those benefits. I'm hoping. I just think the corruption, the greed, the transfer of wealth from the poor, the middle class to the rich has been emboldened by a lot of the policies in government. So I personally am relatively eager to see that change. We'll see. We've seen a lot of promises and, ideas. But I'm still in Missouri. I still want to see the actual results first. Devil's always in the details. And the Mute lobbyist. The lobbyists and contributions are big. That's one thing if we had term limits. And I would also like to see every meeting with a lobbyist or somebody who is a campaign donor recorded, and the entire recording of that meeting put online, along with any commitments for future contributions and a commitment to support a bill. Just summarized real quickly. That every bit of that ought to be public information. And if I've got, a congressman that's accepting $1 million campaign contribution in return to support a bill, fine. I may not be opposed to that. I may be opposed to that. But I think I've got a right to know. So that's kind of the impact. Any questions? there's just so much going on right now in DC, and it's going to be a fascinating year or two. I don't care which side of the aisle you're on. It's going to be a modestly action-packed year or two. It's going to be a lot of stuff going on in front of the cameras, a lot of stuff behind the scenes. We hope to try to keep you somewhat modestly informed. Doge concept is a dream. Corruption is too deep for a lame duck presidency. That's very possible. And that's why I'm cautious. I mean, these people have been entrenched. They've got a lot of power. There has been some commitment to utterly, clean out what, one side would call clean out the DOD, the State Department, the CIA. Well, those are mighty powerful opponents. Oh, Chunk and Toulouse are going to be so jealous.
Well, I had to. I don't know if you heard him meowing outside the door, because once Chunk and Toulouse see this, his name is Finch. Once they see him, he's chased. So I heard him I was like, oh crap, I better get to him before the puppies do. Hi, good boy.
Ellen is always willing to adopt animals.
Mm-hmm.
So she is our resident cat lady.
Thanks. The crazy cat lady. I've heard he'll eat turkey, but I can't seem to get him to. Here, you want it? Maybe he'll eat some.
All right. So enough of Gates until we find out more.
Your orange beast is on your head right now.
We almost need a picture of that.
I know. Mr. Caroline is jealous.
That is still one of my all-time favorite names. Jane's cat is named Mr. Caroline.
Mm-hmm. Now Vince is a sweetie, and he'll get in the cabinets in the kitchen. And I was looking for a pot last night, and I opened it, and his little head popped out like, hey, is it safe? And I was like, nope, not safe. Go right back in there.
Can he let himself in the cabinets? Does he open the door?
Yeah, he opens it. But when, like, in the middle of the night, if the dogs hear it, the cabinet slam, then, it starts. Because they know it's little Vince.
Well, he's a cutie. He looks healthy.
He is, but he doesn't get seen much anymore. Apparently.
Oh, but because of the
little mutts.
The little mutts.
Mm-hmm.
The little mutts can be noisy, and they love to chase cats. They don't want to do anything with them. They just want to chase them. And if the cat just stops and look at them, they stop. And just kind of walk on by like, we so cool.
Mm-hmm. When I first got here, Vince was sitting on the kitchen counter, and it took Tallulah about an hour to see him. And then it was all over. Here you go.
All right. One other question we got was on the tariffs. What are the impact of the tariffs? I've had several questions along this line. And probably most of you have seen, some economists saying, giving their projections, their ideas, saying that, raising the price of imported goods, applying a tax to imports will create more inflation. My 16-year-old cat will climb on the fridge and into the cabinets. Had to put child-proof locks on the cabinets.
Cats are funny. You want to say hi?
So, economists' projections. And they talk about the tariffs will cause and generate inflation. Well, honestly, I got to admit some disappointment in my fellow economists who traditionally suck royally. is that an academic term? Suck royally. And making forecasts and predictions. But I digress, I guess. They argue tariffs are inflationary. And if the world was a simple unidirectional model, yes, they would be. But there are some caveats. First of all, looking at the past. In 2018, if you remember, Trump put tariffs on Chinese imports. What most economists don't mention, well, they rarely mention history, is that the Chinese currency, the yuan, fell 10%, which offset the U.S. tariffs by about 75 to 81%, depending on the specific good. In addition, China subsidized some of its critical exports. China has to export to the U.S. Not only did they really need to in 2018, they need to even more so in 2024. So on some of their more critical exports, they even lowered the price. So you had the depreciation in the yuan, you had the lower price. Theoretically, China paid the taxes, not the U.S. consumer. That's one reason why you didn't see inflation run higher during the Trump years. China right now is faced with a deflationary economy. You know, we've talked about China numerous times before over the past year, and you know, looking at them with all these empty cities and having to destroy them, and the crashing real estate values, stock market dropping, et cetera, et cetera. Well, if these tariffs are implemented, if unchecked, that would only hasten China's demise by hurting Chinese exports. It would do so to such an extent that some Chinese, China watchers think that Xi would be at a risk of being overthrown, which is pretty damn huge, actually. So if you follow China closely, you'll have noted that over the past few years, the people in China have less and less faith in the government. They've been getting more and more angrier. You're seeing little revolts. You're seeing instances of individuals standing up against the government. You know, we've talked about China's social credit score. That alone should piss people off in China. That would just be irritating as hell. Not to mention that, food supplies are dwindling, jobs are dwindling. It's what you have in a deflationary economy. Production in many areas is getting crushed. So China needs the exports to the U.S. more than the U.S. needs the imported goods. So I think it's very possible, if not probable, that they will follow the same policy. They'll debase the yuan even more. They'll subsidize, some of the critical exports. Secondly, and I've said before, some of Trump's tariff proposals, I think, are just negotiating positions, because a lot of countries have tariffs on U.S. products. So Trump's saying, if you're going to put a tariff on U.S. products, we'll put a tariff on your products. The goal is to remove the tariffs both ways. And that's largely what happened with Europe, Canada, et cetera, in 2017, 2018. Now, another aspect to this whole tariff discussion is that consumers oftentimes have substitutes they can purchase, or it's a product they really don't need. So if they're not buying it, if they're buying something else, that increase in cost really doesn't impact inflation. Another factor is that a lot of the manufacturing capacity, since Trump put in his tariffs initially in 2017, a lot of the manufacturing capacity has left China For example, Apple's iPhones used to all be manufactured in China by Foxconn. Now they've got plants in China, Vietnam, Malaysia, etc. Those countries won't have the same sizable tariffs that China will. Would be subject to lower rates. Another option is that they could build the plant in the US and they would skip the tariffs altogether, create
That's the best option.
more US jobs, and that's kind of one of the stated goals of the whole plan. Another aspect to it is that the hike would only be a one-time increase, not necessarily creating a constant higher stream of prices. And again, many of the products are products Americans don't necessarily need to buy or buy so frequently. I know some people who buy TVs somewhat regularly, every few years. They just want the better technology, the better picture, the bigger screen, whatever. And they're throwing out or putting perfectly good TVs in rooms where they'll never get used. I mean, some of these TVs have gotten so cheap. I was in Costco and they had a 55-inch TV with a great picture for $350.
You didn't buy it?
No.
No. I'm surprised.
Yeah. And for critical items, like China manufactures most of the antibiotics. Unfortunately, they manufacture the antibiotics sold in this country. So for critical items, there probably would be exemptions issued for those critical products that would not subject them to the tariffs. So when economists say there will be inflation and they do their little magic, I'm like, it's really kind of an incomplete picture. Budimir, concerned about farmers to table, land grab panic.
That's definitely happening in Canada,
Yeah.
especially with the Chinese coming in. And now Trudeau has finally said that he's going to stop, they're going to cut down the amount of immigrants.
Yeah, and Trump has seemed to indicate that he'll make it illegal for China to buy land because they have been buying land next to bases. They've been buying a lot of farmland. And
so has Bill Gates yeah, right? Bill Gates?
Yeah, Microsoft.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He owns a ton of agriculture land, and he was doing an interview about, how cows are the biggest problem in the world as far as climate, and they've got several different ways that they could either give the cows a vaccine, change their gut biome, whatever, or just have a fake meat.
Yeah, and I was watching one video on how they make some of the fake meat. It's basically a fungus that they grow
gross.
and then use it to convert into some meat-like substance.
Consistency.
It just
that they're
it
trying
just
to
did
get
not.
to taste like meat.
Yeah. North Carolina, making sure less land is held by foreign companies. There's that. And, in the UK, I saw where they're trying to put in a 20% inheritance tax, which will ultimately destroy farmers. A lot of people don't understand. A lot of farmers, even in the US, have gone out of business over the past few years. The increase in regulations, the difficulty with environmental regulations, additional taxes. There are intense regulations on farmers producing their own meat for sale. They have to put it through one of the 5 approved companies who run all the meat packing plants. So the farmers get a very low price, and the widespread is going to these 5 companies who own the meat processing plants and then, sell it to various retailers or sell it to consumers. That kind of stuff needs to end. So hopefully,
local, I guess you call them butchers or butcheries, or what's the proper term, Clay?
Butcher.
Meat places
Yeah.
that sell local meat. At least I can give my state, correct? Moffett.
Yeah, but that's only within the state. They can't sell out of state. That's the
Right.
problem.
But I mean, if you can find something with it, because I'm in South Carolina now, so if you can find, a place like that, God, give them all the business they can handle.
Tariffs, another aspect to the increase in costs, quote unquote, from tariffs is the proposed tax cuts. Now, we've seen a number of proposals or ideas, floated by Trump, and one of them is eliminating the income tax altogether. Others would be, cuts in the corporate tax rate and the personal tax rate. Well, just going to the extreme, if Trump does eliminate the personal income tax, and these are just rough estimates, but looking at the average family, it makes about $75,000 a year. The decrease in federal taxes would save them between $13,000 and $18,000 a year. Now, just running some rough numbers, if the average family spends 20% of its income on Chinese imported goods, and there was a 25% tariff on average on all goods, it would cost them a net of about $3,700. So net, if the two ideas are implemented, you'll have a net gain per family, average family, of about $10,000 to $15,000 a year. Now imagine what that kind of increase in the family take-home income would do to the economy, would do to their ability to save or invest. Now, how likely is it that he'll be able to get rid of taxes? Your guess is as good as mine.
I got to interrupt.
You
My
know,
computer's about to restart for some reason. It's decided it's going to do its thing. I'm not sure how to stop it at this point. So
okay.
I'll be back. Okay. Stop.
You never leave us, so we don't know what to do. That's funny. Good, bless her heart, get on the train. Now, how likely is it that he can get rid of taxes? Well, I saw one estimate that Americans spend about $550 billion a year trying to do their taxes. This is by a heritage economist, Peter Sadange. And he also kind of whimsically pointed out that the tax code is longer than the Lord of the Rings trilogy, has more words than the Lord of the Rings trilogy, which is, kind of funny if you think about it. But it's overwhelming people with regulations, knowing that they can't comply with it correctly or perfectly. So it gives the IRS a lot of opportunity, if they want to take advantage of it, to, I'm going to go ahead and say, persecute those it doesn't like. And we saw that where the IRS, the department, actively worked against some groups with political affiliations that they didn't like. It was illegal. Nobody was, arrested or sent to jail, but the IRS, when it was, became public information, the IRS, backtracked and, changed. But just knowing that they can do that for years, as long as nobody else finds out. Moody, that is here too. My kinfolk are quickly moving to town because they cannot afford the taxes from inheritance. It to me is a shame. People work and struggle to, pay taxes on their property, on their income for decades, and then when they die, a even bigger chunk is taken out of the estate. And I forget what what the exclusion is now. It used to be $1 million. It's probably, more than that now, but haven't looked it up in years. But that's not a real high bar. And that's a contributor to like the destruction of the family farm. They might have hundreds or thousands of acres and, barely me making enough off of that each year to stay in business, provide for their family, pay for the labor, the gas, diesel, all that kind of stuff. And now when the land is passed to the kids, they have a huge tax bill because the land that has been in the family for generations is now being taxed at $5,000-$10,000 an acre. Well, they just don't have the cash to pay it. So they have to sell it, either to a real estate developer or to a corporate farm, whatever. That's just wrong. I live here on the beach and there are old cottages that have been here for 50 or 60 years. People on fixed incomes, retirees, the house has been in the family again for generations. Well, the property taxes go up. Instead of being a few $100s a year, it now becomes $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 a year. Individuals can't afford it on fixed income, so they have to sell. House is torn down and a big new multi-million-dollar house is built. Yay, property taxes increase. I think it's just wrong. Nobody should lose their property because they can't afford the increased taxes. Now, also, another area that could be saved is doing away with the IRS itself. That's not an insignificant amount of money spent each year. So what's coming? I don't know. I can't be sure. I do think major changes are coming. Major changes to tax law are coming, but it's hard to estimate the net effects. But I'm thinking overall, net, it'll be beneficial to most everyone. Anybody have any questions? Does that make sense? Moody. Oh, I'm going to butcher this. Abattoir? Fancy name for a place where meat is butchered. If you're interested and you have the freezer space, in most states, there are farms that will sell directly to people in state. You can buy half or a whole cow. Some of them will butcher and wrap it, and then you just take it home, put it in your freezer. Sometimes you have the portion delivered to a butcher who then, cuts it and packages it. You pick it up from the butcher. But either way, I have not done that in the past, but I'm probably going to start. But there are, opportunities to bypass and try to help, the small businesses. And both, E-Train and I do try to, where we can, buy local and support local people, even if it's a little bit more. Now, there are limits, not going to pay twice for the good, but a lot of times you can get actually cheaper prices or prices that are very similar with food. So I will still call it a butcher and not a abattoir. Don't know if that's correct, but I'm going with it. Anybody have any questions so far? Y'all have been very patient. One thing I saw and I thought was modestly interesting was this graph. This was published in Financial Times, kind of an international financial rag. And it was it shows the blue line is the stock market, the S&P 500. But the interesting part is the pink horizontal bars. This is the rate of so-called insider trades, insider sales, the ratio of sellers to buyers. Now, the ratio is over here on the left-hand side. The value of the stock index is on the right-hand side. So if we look at this, at the pink lines, you'll notice this pink line up here is at an all-time high. Insider sales have hit a record high for any quarter in 2 decades. Now, these are sales by executives, and sales by executives with stocks listed in the Wilshire 5000. So it's a broad stock index. These are all sales for any reason. It doesn't really break it down why the executive sold, but it was just kind of interesting information. When you see insiders selling at an all-time high, that it's not often you can say that. So now keep in mind, this, if you look at these pink horizontal bars, they fluctuate wildly. And you can tell, in 2005, 2006, you saw the insider trading actually decline before the crash. And then once it crashed, it came to a virtual halt. Obviously, the prices were getting too low to sell. So it's not a perfect indicator. May not even be a good indicator of what's going to happen in the market. But it's still kind of an interesting issue. And if you look at, some of the traditional numbers, when it gets high, oftentimes it presages a drop in the market by 2 or 3 months. So, and part of it is you also look at who's selling. I pay attention probably more to the big investment banks like Goldman Sachs. And over the past, couple months, we've seen 4 major insiders, the chief vice president, the executive vice president, the chief financial officer, Coleman, the board member, Tom Montague, sold more than 28 million shares since November the 6th. And you remember Jamie Dimon at Morgan sold, was it $150 million worth of his stock this summer? Just interesting. Just more information for you to consider. Moody. Eminent Domain is taking generational homes to build modern Airbnb. Yeah, I think that has been abused in many ways. The government saying, hey, we have a vested interest, so we get to seize your property and pay you what we think the going rate is. I got issues with that. I just don't think people ought to be cheated out of their property for, whimsical government or additional revenues to the city. That is just not the purpose of eminent domain. And then have done the pack the freezer route with teen boys. Yeah, I will. I don't have teen boys, but I do like having food. I hate going to the store, so I'd rather buy in bulk than I would have to keep running to the store. Of course, I still end up having to run to the store and get little stuff. But yeah, I just like having the comfort and knowledge that I've got a good supply of food. Now, one other thing, and we kind of were talking about this, a comment was made earlier about DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, headed by Musk and Vivek. So I, kind of did a little hunting and pecking, trying to come up with a list of inefficient government spending. Don't know if you'll agree. You might think some of this is good, and that's okay. But these were some of the things that I thought were opportunities for savings to the taxpayer. Some of the things the U.S. government spends money on. Well, 2 years ago, we gave $6 million to Egypt to help them boost tourism. The federal government spent $25,000 on a promotional tour for the Alabama Watermelon Queen. I'm from Alabama, didn't even know we had a watermelon queen, and certainly didn't know that the federal government was paying for her travel. That just kind of cracks me up. I'm sorry. The U.S. National Institutes of Health spent $442,000 to study the behavior of male prostitutes in Vietnam. I kid you not. I don't know who came up with that proposal. I don't know who funded it, but that's just pure gold. And we're not done with the National Institutes of Health. It funded a $600,000 study to explain, get this, $600,000 to explain why chimpanzees throw their feces. Okay, next. The federal government, your beloved federal government, spent $750,000 to build a soccer field for inmates at Guantanamo Bay. I want to see what a grass field is worth $750,000 looks like. I want pictures. We're not done yet. There's more. Over the past 15 years, members of the U.S. Senate, and apparently you pay for this, have spent $5.25 million on hair care products. $5 million on hairspray, gel, whatever. Why the hell are taxpayers paying for hairspray for senators? I'm just mildly curious. Got another good one for you. All of these are good, actually. The federal government has spent $27 million to teach people in Monaco how to create pottery. Pottery. $27 million. Teaching them to make pottery. Why? Don't know. I don't know. Moody, you have been patient with me tonight. Thank you for your insights. Off to bed for the clouder. Night owl. Appreciate you joining us. Good to see you again. Just love having you and appreciate the comments and the feedback. Sleep well. Blessings to you. All right, so pottery. Is this making you laugh? I don't know. It kind of I can either laugh or cry. And I'm thinking, I do research. I could write grants. I could, fill out a grant, ask for government funding. And I'm like, why didn't I ask for $27 million to fly to Morocco and try to teach them how to make clay pots? I don't know. That didn't occur to me. So this is kind of inspiring. What can I come up with here? I know. I could come up with a grant and request $4.5 million to spray alcoholic rats that I've gotten addicted to alcohol, with bobcat urine. and then study their reaction. Oh, folks, we're not done yet. There's more. I also spent $1.8 million studying monkeys gambling. $1.8 million to study monkeys who've been taught to gamble, throw dice, and then see their reaction to the, to the snake eyes. I don't know. They spent $12 million studying monkeys who they gave meth to, turned them into crackheads. $12 million. That's almost as bad as Fauci infesting puppies with. Anyway, we won't go into all that. That still pisses me off. For all you, cat fans, government spent $2.7 million studying cats on treadmills. Watching cats walk on treadmills. They spent $1.7 million watching dogs walking in heat to determine their reaction to walking in heat. Still more. $2.1 million on sex education for commercial sex workers in Ethiopia. $2.1 million to teach prostitutes how to have sex properly. Oh, God, I love this country. We spent $3.6 billion on stimulus checks for 2.2 million dead people. There was one study, a grant for $75,000 to study the effects of blowing lizards off of trees with a leaf blower. How about $9.4 million to KYRGYZ? This is KYRGYZ. I am not sure how to pronounce that. But they got almost $10 million for anti-corruption. Have no idea where it is. Have no idea what kind of corruption they were trying to fight. But it sounds like we paid the oligarchs $10 million to say that they cleaned up corruption. How about $1 million to NASA to prepare various religions, on the acceptance of extraterrestrial life? And just so the prostitutes in the U.S. don't feel left out, we spent $1.4 million for sex education for prostitutes in California. Federal grant teaching California prostitutes how to have sex. And then we gave $1 million for a Cornell University study to determine where it hurts most to be stung by a bee. Are you just like taking bees and just having them sting different places on people's body and say, what hurts worse? How do you agree to do a study like that? I don't know. Anyway, that was just some samples that I thought might kind of add a little levity to the evening. On a more serious note, something that is bothersome to me, honestly, might should have mentioned this earlier. It's only been a month since Helene struck Western North Carolina, Eastern Tennessee, Georgia, Florida. But the impact is still being realized. Just saw these numbers come out. The delinquency rates for October and for the Asheville area, which is Buncombe County, the rate tripled in 1 month. It went from about 2% to about 6%. That's massive. The default rate on home mortgages, the delinquency rate on home mortgages tripled. For all in North Carolina counties impacted by Helene, the rate rose from 4.1 to 4.6. That's a 50 basis point increase in a month. The national average is about 3.9. And this is only just the beginning. Tourism has absolutely been hammered. People were warned to stay away. The roads were closed, flooded, washed away. Bridges were washed away. Tourism has just ground to a halt. Saw one figure where it was down 67% just in the portion of the month. There will be more. There'll be jobs lost. You had homes destroyed with no insurance, no flood insurance, no water insurance. So insurance is not going to pay to rebuild them. You had businesses absolutely leveled, again, with no insurance. They're not coming back. It's not coming back. Not anytime soon. Not for decades. So, this is out of the news. The national media has folded up shop and left. FEMA is still trying to get organized and set up locations. Doing what? I don't know. But the devastation remains, and the pain is only going to increase. So, we'll kind of keep an eye on that, try to keep you updated on that. In other news in the economy at large, auto delinquencies continue to rise. I just saw where Ford has a massive inventory challenge. They have over 200,000 trucks alone, just trucks, on dealer lots, with less than 1,000 of those being 2025. So, we talked about last week how they stopped production of trucks and completely stopped EV production. Over 5,000 of these 200,000 are from 2023 that they still haven't been able to get rid of. So simply, if you or someone is thinking of buying a Ford truck, and it'll probably apply to, GM, GMC, Ram as well. But if somebody is thinking about getting a Ford truck, heaven knows why anybody would want to buy a Ford, but they're going to be getting a lot cheaper in mid-December, end of December. Now, some will say that the prices aren't going down, that the manufacturers just don't have an alternative. Well, keeping the inventory on the lots is not cheap either. Not having any sales is not good for business. I haven't seen the UAW have any complaints or issue any comment. If you remember, back, months ago, they went on strike and got, huge new contracts. It's going to be interesting to see how all that plays out. But that may be a reason or an incentive for companies not to cut the price because their costs have gone up. Don't know. I'm thinking they need the cash flow, and they don't have much opportunity to sell the trucks elsewhere. So you'll probably see more plants slowing production, shutting down, probably more layoffs, and you'll probably see some truck sales coming up. Also saw where credit card delinquencies jumped 11% in the third quarter. Unfortunately, the data is only released per quarter, not monthly. This is the 5th consecutive quarter of increases, the longest streak since the 07-08 subprime crisis. So with debt, total credit card debt at about $1.2 trillion, means about $130 billion is on the verge of default, non-payment. banks are continuing to take it on the chin. We've talked about how banks can't handle losses well. Well, not only do they have increasing auto delinquencies, not only do they have increasing mortgage delinquencies, they've got increasing credit card delinquencies. It's like the triple witching hour. Everything banks own is defaulting. That's not a good scenario. Did I happen to mention earlier, don't go into debt for Christmas? Please don't. Please avoid that for your sake. Now, one other area or sector that I've been kind of keeping an eye on, particularly since the election, is big pharma and healthcare. Two major sectors, two extremely profitable sectors over the past 4 years. But as a sector, they are not excited about Trump and RFK taking over the government side of that. Healthcare stocks just set a new 15-year low versus the S&P 500. It underperformed the S&P. It's underperformed the S&P 500 by 20%. Just looking at a few of my favorite companies, Pfizer is down 10% in 2 weeks. Moderna in 2 weeks since the election is down 38%. Merck is down 7%. BioPharm is down nearly 60% in 2 weeks. BioPharm is a big supplier of the mRNA technology to Pfizer. So that's kind of fascinating. That's kind of interesting. And that is probably only the beginning. Again, we'll see what actually happens, what policies are actually implemented once the administration takes office. But there's some mighty big changes being anticipated by various sectors in the economy. Pharma and healthcare is certainly one of them. All right, I've been carrying on here. Anybody have any questions or comments? This is the time to ask them. Whoops. I'm sitting here thinking, did I show that while I was talking about it? This is what the delinquency increase in Asheville County looks like. The county is actually Buncombe. But this is what's happened to the delinquency rate since Helene in a month. And like I say, this is only the beginning. Yeah, sometimes it's it's hard to talk and click buttons at the same time. Any other questions, comments? General references, suggestions, investment advice. Feel free to throw it all out. In the meantime, I'd like to ask you to, if you will, hit the like, subscribe buttons. If you've got some other questions, that you think of after the show, email me at moffatonmoney@gmail.com, or you can DM me directly at Twitter or X now, Moffat on Money. If you haven't followed us, please do. That's really all I have for the night. So if y'all don't have any other questions, this probably will be a good time to thank you for joining us. We appreciate your support, your encouragement. It's good to see y'all. Melissa, thank you again for joining us. Hope everything is doing well out there on the West Coast. I saw that big cyclone. It looks like it's going to hit the northern part of the state and Oregon. I hope you're not impacted. It looked to be a little out of your way, but with the damage we've seen from, Helene, I hope similar things aren't going to happen, on that side. I know there's some mountains up in the area. So, but thank you all for joining us. Hope that y'all have a great rest of the week and hope that you will join us Saturday night. We're on every Saturday night 7 o'clock. Same channel, same time. Look forward to seeing you then. Y'all have a great week ahead. Our time is up. We thank you for yours. Good night, everyone.